my name is Paul Slentz, and I am a pastor in Nashville, Tennessee at the United Methodist Church and an Earthkeeper. And my appointment at this time is to the Ministry of Creation Care and Environmental Justice, and that is my title is Pastor for Creation Care and Environmental Justice for the Nashville District of the United Methodist Church. And this is concerns about care for the earth, care for creation is something that I've had for a really, really long time, going way back when I was in high school, back in the late 60s, early 70s. So something I've cared about for a very long time, but just in the last several years have become to feel even more and more strongly about this as a matter of faith, and a matter of how I live out my discipleship. And so about just about 7 years ago now, during a time of retreat and reflection, I did a lot of studying and thinking about all of this, and felt just strongly that this is the direction God was calling me in. About 5 years ago, I helped to start a creation care ministry for the Nashville District in the United Methodist Church. And then 2 years ago, took a sabbatical leave to really focus on this. From a ministry that I'd been part of for 18 years, low-income church in West Nashville, but just felt strongly called to this, and so took a sabbatical year to explore that further, and then last year was appointed to this ministry, and heard about the Earthkeepers program very early on, because some of the people who are planning it, Dan Dranko is here in Nashville, and Pat Watkins and Susan Mullen, they were planning it here in Nashville, so I got to hear about it early on and was very excited about it. And when the opportunity came, I really leapt at the chance to become an Earthkeeper. And so that's how I'm an Earthkeeper. Enjoyed the training last fall. Just got back from, several days ago, back from a week in the DC area. First at the National Conference / Retreat of Interfaith Power and Light organization, of which I'm a member and part of the state Tennessee Interfaith Power and Light organization. I serve on its steering committee. And that was a really, really good conference. I think the thing that was great for me about the Interfaith Power and Light Conference, which was held at the Bon Secours Retreat Center outside of Baltimore, was that it was a chance to meet other really caring people from across the country, from different faith traditions. And there was also some strong spiritual elements to it. We got to get outside in the beautiful outdoors around the retreat center and to reflect on just the wonder and beauty and sort of magnificence and intricacy of God's creation. I know that one thing I really enjoyed was just being instructed to look carefully at things and to listen carefully, and I took a good time to do that, and just to look very carefully at plants and just the wonder of them. And so that was a really good experience. And we talked about national strategy. There was a real desire on the part of the people with state chapters that a lot of focus be given to helping the state chapters in their organizing efforts, and to get training for grassroots organizing and that type of thing. And so I felt like it was a really good place to be. And spent 2 days in the conference, and then on the third day, on Thursday, April 27th, went to a lobby day on the Hill, and drove in early in the morning to beat the rush hour traffic, and did to some extent. And had 3 meetings. One was with the staff, didn't get to meet with the legislators themselves, but met with the staff of Senators Alexander and Corker, and then with the representative from Nashville, Jim Cooper, his staff people. And that was, a little bit mixed results on all of that. We talked with Senator Corker and Senator Alexander's staff about the methane rule, the Bureau of Land Management methane rule. And the vote was just taken on that yesterday, and it ended up that the Senate did not support a change of the Obama rule, which was a small victory, but an important one. Unfortunately, our senators did not vote the right way on that. But we had a conversation with them about that, and also about the Environmental Protection Agency threat of cutbacks in their funding. And I felt pretty strongly that both senators are not going to support huge cutbacks to the EPA, and so that was hopeful. talked with Senator Corker's staff about the Paris Agreement, because Senator Corker chairs the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and we just expressed, Dan Dranko and I met with him, and we just expressed very strongly our concerns that the U.S. stay very much committed to the Paris Climate Agreement. And, the Corker staff people talked about their concerns about the treaty, but also said that they thought that there were strong reasons for staying involved. And, of course, they didn't make a commitment for the senator, and he's not in a position to make that decision anyway. But I think he does have the president's ear, and so we had a good conversation about that as well. Representative Cooper has been very good on Earth care issues, and so we basically just thanked him for that and encouraged him to support a resolution that is or a bill that is in the House that would have a pilot program from the Department of Energy that would set aside a certain amount of funding for nonprofit agencies and organizations across the country to do different types of retrofitting of their buildings and so forth to make them more energy efficient. And so had a good conversation about that. So that Friday of that week went to the, or actually Thursday evening, Thursday evening the Earthkeepers group got together, and I had supper with people and enjoyed seeing folks, but I was so worn out and had to connect with my son's apartment over in DC, so I wasn't part of that conversation, and I'm sorry about that, because I would have enjoyed being part of that, but can only do so much. But anyway, the next day, Friday, was the day-long conference of the United Methodist Church Caretakers of God's Creation conference, and was really glad to be part of that. Thought that there was some, the service to begin with led by some of our Native American friends was just excellent and very powerful, and that was a great way to start the day. Some good talks. I don't remember the bishop's name, retired bishop from Virginia, whose talk was very good, very motivating. Fletcher Harper, I believe is his name, from Green Faith, gave a good talk. Again, kind of encouraging and inspiring. And our friend from Washington, Jenny Phillips, gave an interesting and thought-provoking talk about how we work with other groups that are working on things that impact people's lives, moral questions, and particularly working with issues related to LGBT rights, and it was thought-provoking, and I think certainly something that we need to think about as a movement, how we make those connections, build coalitions, and just exactly what that looks like. But again, a good thought-provoking talk. Good workshops. I enjoyed the one on divestment. Thought that was especially good. Took a little break in the afternoon again because I was tired. Then to hear Bill McKibben speak is my first chance to hear him speak that evening, and again getting us primed for the march and giving us some hopeful news about what's going on in Africa in regard to people that do need electricity, but not relying on fossil fuels, but instead going in the direction of solar power, and so some hopeful things there. So it was a good day, good to be with people. Again, I thought there was a really good turnout. Sorry that for the people in Ohio, just want to say a word about that, because I know they had planned really hard for that conference, and the decision to move to DC was hard to take that away from them, but probably made sense since a lot of people would have been torn otherwise. But I want to give a little shout out to our friends in Ohio. So that was a good day. Then the next morning, the day of the march, I didn't know exactly how long it would take to get into DC or what the issues would be, or down by the Capitol. So I caught a bus at 6:45 and was down there by 7:15, way before most of the people with the United Methodist Church that I was seeking to be with. But walked around the Capitol and actually got to see, kind of from a distance. It was already going on, so I didn't go be part of it. But again, a Native American service that was being held by the Reflecting Pool, that with the drumming and very colorful clothing, and just all of just a really neat witness. So got to see that, and then just wandered around for a while, and then went over to the United Methodist building, and a good interfaith worship service was held there before the march, and then walked over with our group of United Methodists mainly over to the march site, and gathered there in the heat and the sun. But it was just a really good spirit. The United Methodist women had made these big raindrops, blue raindrops that had words like sacred and beautiful and creation and different things, life, different things on them. And I was carrying one of those signs, and just had a really good spirit to the whole thing. Gathered there, waited a long time in that sun, but it was a chance to talk with people and get to know some folks that I didn't know before. Anyway, we walked over to the beginning of the march site, and I had my little raindrop that the United Methodist women had put together with a whole bunch of signs that mine said sacred on it, and I think there were about 30 of us that had raindrop signs, and some said beautiful, some said creation, some said, I can't remember what they all said, but they basically were the message of the beauty of water and the importance of water, pure water. And met a lot of people there that I didn't know while we were waiting. It was hot, in low 90s, but a good spirit, lots of singing going on, some chanting going on, but just a chance to meet people that I didn't know and to talk, and that was good. Once the march started, which, I'm sure it started up at the front long before it started back where we were, but once we started going, it was just a really good spirit. Walked with Jennifer Aldridge, who's the president of the Tennessee Interfaith Power and Light, for a lot of the way, and had good conversations with her. A couple people in polar bear costumes were close by, and I'm sure that they really deserve some sort of award for the heat of the day and marching like that. And I think a moving moment was right at 2 o'clock when everybody sat down at the same time and sort of simulated a heartbeat. I really like those who kind of went like this, but a lot of people were just clapping. But kind of a neat message about life and the heartbeat of the earth, and felt good about that. By the time we got near the White House, I think things were so jammed up that we kind of peeled off to the left. Never actually got to the White House, but a lot of other people did, and it was good to. I guess overall, my sense is that there's just so many pieces to a movement like this, and my feeling is that the most important part of that is what goes on back in the grassroots, like what everybody is doing back in their local congregations and so forth, and in their in their districts and in their conferences and all of that. That's the most important work. But I think it is valuable from time to time to have a big showing like the People's Climate March, to lift our voices and to be visible and to make it clear that there are an awful lot of people that we were representing, even though there were 200,000 of us there, and that's a lot, but of course that's small compared to the country, but we were representing an awful lot of people, and that there really are millions and millions people across the country who care very much about this, and of course throughout the world. So I think it was a good place to be. My hopes and or concerns about the United Methodist Church and its commitment to working to mitigate climate change. First of all, I just think that it's absolutely at the heart of our faith. Care for life, pushing life. Is a long time a slogan of the church that I was part of for so many years, Edge Hill United Methodist Church, pushing life, and I think that that's very much what the Christian, our Christian work is about, our Christian faith is about, is pushing life, being resurrection people in the face of difficult things, challenging things, death-giving things, that we promote life and that we promote resurrection. And the care for creation and care for the poor, who are always hit hardest and first by environmental degradation. I just think that the intersection of care for this wonderful gift that God has given us and love of neighbor is very clear in this work, and so it's very much part of our discipleship. I believe that the Council of Bishops, in their letter that they sent now about 8 years ago, I guess at this point, talked about the importance of this. I don't think that it's been the priority for the church that I would like it to be, but I think that's changing. I think that with the development of the Earthkeepers group through the Board of Global Ministries and the ongoing work in the Board of Church and Society, that this is becoming more of a priority for the church. So we will see. I think that our responsibility, those of us who are United Methodists, and myself as United Methodist pastor, is to continue to speak out about how this is central to our faith, how the threats to creation are real, and the harm is not just distant, but is now. And even if it was more down the line, which it could be if we don't make some real changes, that care about future generations is also part of what we are to be about in our love of neighbor. And really, truly, for somebody my age, it's my children and grandchildren and all the grandchildren and children of all people of the earth, and of all creatures. And I think that both of those things are important. That there are fellow creatures on this planet. They have intrinsic worth. They were created by God, and they have value regardless of their utility for people. They have value in and of themselves, and I think that's an important message as well about the goodness of God's good creation. So I think this is clearly a matter of faith. I think that the sin of overreaching, the sin of going beyond good limits, is very much at the heart of what we're dealing with here. I think that was the story of Genesis, really, of the garden in the fall. Is reasonable limits were set by God for Adam and Eve in the myth of that story, and they trespassed those with devastating consequences. And I think that as people, as human beings, that we have a history of doing that, for selfish reasons, for putting ourselves first. We go beyond reasonable limits, and right now, I think that's a parable for our times, and a warning to us that God has given us reasonable limits. There is plenty for all. If we will just and to care for the earth can happen. We can still get what we need. We can meet our needs, but not our greed. And I think that's part of the message as well. And that's not a message of poverty or of scarcity. There is plenty, and we can have joyful lives, but they just can't be so wrapped around consuming and using up the Earth's limited resources, including air and water, and threatening our climate. So I've got hope, and I just believe that this is important work. One of the things that I feel really good about is the fact that our bishop here in the Nashville area, Bishop McAlilly, Bill McAlilly, has been supportive of this ministry, and the fact that I was able to receive, as a pastor, to receive an appointment to the Ministry of Creation Care and Environmental Justice. I think that's a very hopeful sign, and again a sign that the church is taking all of this seriously. And what that means in terms of what I do is that it has basically two pieces. One is doing educational work, going in looking for opportunities, and we've had some so far. I've done a few of these, one on my own and a couple with Dan Dranko, who's an Earthkeeper here in Nashville, to go into churches and to do series on this. And usually the way that works is to do the theological and scriptural foundations of creation care, why it is a matter of faith, and ideally have a couple of Sundays to deal with that because there's so much, and then to look at the threats. And we have generally focused on the threats of climate change, but also there's issues of habitat destruction and just overuse of resources and all of the various air pollution, water pollution, all of those different pieces, and then finally to look at what people can do. And in their individual lives, and also with the church itself, whatever the local congregation, things that they can do in terms of their use of resources, their energy use, the way they use their land, and so forth. And then finally at the advocacy level of how so many of these issues have to be addressed at larger levels. It's great if for instance, if we know that it's important that not everybody have to be driving cars all the time, but unless your city and many times the state is involved as well, and sometimes the federal government, if there's no funding for mass transit, well, then there's no opportunity to do that. So many of these, and of course the larger issues of energy resources and so forth, of whether we're going to move towards renewables and the importance of moving towards renewables. Again, that's a public policy thing, and so the importance of advocacy. So that's kind of the approach, and also have helped to put together a conference back in the fall that addressed many of these issues with other people. And again, I think that just theologically, we do have to really just that's part of our role as certainly my role as a pastor, but all of us. To think carefully about these things in terms of our faith, and to think about Scripture and how Scripture can teach us things about how we respond to this current challenge, which I believe is one of the biggest moral challenges of our time. But what its limits are too, because as you were sharing with me earlier, Dale, the fact that it was written at a time when the issue of climate change was certainly not on the writer's horizons. So, but one thing I would say though is that it is interesting that even those early writers understood a connection between human sin and harm to the earth, and they were, because of the unfaithfulness of Israel, the land itself suffered, and so they, even perhaps not at the global scale that we are aware of now, but even in their more local levels, and certainly the story of the garden, and the devastating impact of the original sin, again in the midst of the fall. And so those writers, they inspired by God, had some insights about all of this that are valuable today. And then of course the main message of Christ of loving neighbor is very much central to what this is all about as well. So important stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Dale, for doing this. Doing good work.